You are listening to the voice of the frontline protector here at the Private Officer Beat Radio. Every week you'll hear breaking news, topics of training, information for the industry of security, public safety, and law enforcement. So strap in, hang on, we're about to speed off in this episode of the Private Officer Beat Radio. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Private Officer Beat Radio, a production of Blue Ram Media Group, LLC, and Private Officer International. I'm Rick McCann behind the microphone this morning, and today we have a lot to talk about. Does that sound familiar? Almost every show I open up with the same thing. I have the same sentence because it's true. We have so much to talk about. Today, our topic and what really the principal piece of information that we're going to talk about is violence pending. And you probably have maybe heard rumors, but I have seen it firsthand through law enforcement avenues where violence is expected in the upcoming days regardless of who wins the election. And I want to talk about how that affects private security, because some people, they don't think so. That, people in security think, well, that's there'll be riots and there'll be this and there'll be that, but it doesn't affect me. Well, you would be wrong if you do think that way, because I can give you plenty of examples of what has happened in recent years during riots and protests and how it has cost the life of a number of security officers who were on duty, private and special police who were on duty, and how they had to run for their lives in some instances. And we'll talk about that on today's program. Of course, I want to get to the news here momentarily as well, because there's a lot going on in the news. To that end, if you are not receiving the Private Officer Beat newsletter, Officer Down reports, and breaking news, please go to our website and sign up today, or send us an email at helpdesk@privateofficer.com, and we'll send you a link where you can sign up. It's only $49 a year. It's not a whole lot of money. Right now, our staff is at the lowest staffing numbers that it's been in 20 years that POI has been in business. We have had to reduce staffing, especially in the news department and some of the other membership services that we provide, because staffing is low. Not because people don't want to work. They do want to work. Unfortunately, we're not able to fund those positions because we're not receiving the revenues. Like any business, we got to have the sales, we have to have donations, we have to have the revenue to be able to pay for those positions, those services, and to keep the wheel greased and keep our business up and running. Unfortunately, many security officers, I would say long before COVID, has determined that it's not important to be a member of a association, professional association. It's not important to see and read and understand what's going on in the industry or field, even though it's growing by leaps and bounds now more than ever. Since there's a reduction of law enforcement, so many companies are putting private security in their place, right or wrong, with or without training. And you would think that many would think, oh yeah, well, I need to get, at least connected with some professional training, a professional organization, someone who cares about us. But that really hasn't been the fact. That hasn't been what's happened in a number of years. I don't know why. I really don't. We've looked at this from every angle. We've researched it. We've talked to people. As with years previous, many just don't see the benefit of spending a little bit of money to be in an organization for the rest of their life. Some say they're only in the security job for a short amount of time, and they don't want to have to, spend money for something that may or may not help them down the road. I'm going to take a quick break. You're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Human trafficking is slavery.
And it happens all over America.
Any child, any woman, any man could potentially become a victim of human trafficking.
I am a victim of labor trafficking.
I was victim of child sex trafficking, but now I own my body.
Human trafficking is any kind of forced labor.
It can happen to anybody.
I am a mother.
I am an author.
I am a son.
I'm an advocate.
I am an educator.
I'm a sister.
I am a brother.
I'm so much more than what happened to me.
I am strong.
I am brave.
I am outspoken.
I am compassionate.
I am a survivor.
I'm a survivor.
I am a survivor.
I am a survivor.
I am a survivor.
I am a survivor of human trafficking.
I heard about a shooting involving a 3-year-old girl over the summer. My daughter Riley is that age.
There was a point when I felt that I was going to die.
My parents used to always say a bullet doesn't have a name on it.
Someone put a bullet in the back of my 14-year-old son's head.
The gun should never be an option.
We're Americans. We don't have to live like this.
We can all make a difference.
In the United States, 88 people die of gun violence every day.
We can end gun violence.
I hope that you listened to On the Legal Side on Sunday, one of the programs that we produce here at Blue Ram Media Group. We had a very important topic that we had to discuss, one that we have talked about in previous years, at least 5 or 6 times over the last 20 years. And we laid out a lawsuit that just came in the last week or so, just was filed. This was a lawsuit against school security, teachers, the school system, and the city of Newport News, Virginia, where a child died, had a heart attack, 16-year-old, and no one attempted CPR. Really hope that you'll go to that program on the legal side. This was just yesterday that we did the program, and I hope that you'll listen to it because it's very, very important. Many security personnel don't believe they need to have training, don't believe that they should intervene with first aid or CPR. Unfortunately, this lawsuit that was just brought, well, that's for $85 million, and security officers are named in the lawsuit, along with many others who didn't do anything. And it is very important that you have the proper training. In fact, as I stated yesterday on the program, it's required in some states when you're a contract regulatory security officer, and some states require that if you're an employee of a school system, even a contract employee, that you have to have it. So, yeah, take a few moments. It's definitely worth listening to, and pass it along, because whether it's a liability issue or not, I just can't see myself or anyone in uniform, anyone of authority, just standing there and allowing somebody to die. I'm not going to touch them. I'm not going to do anything because I'm not trained. Really? You're just going to watch them die. Sad. I do have a lot of other breaking news items I want to talk about. We recently presented several awards, and you can go to our website and check that out as well. And today we're talking here in just a few moments about violence and how it's pending. I mean, every law enforcement agency is sending out information. Some already have been trained, along with the National Guard, and I do believe that things are definitely going to happen. During the 2020 riots, and a few, even after that, a few security officers were injured and killed. But during the riots, there were 6 security officers killed. One of the most prominent cases that came to be was the murder of Dave Patrick Underwood in California. He was a contracted security officer at a federal courthouse, federal building. He was murdered because he was in uniform. They probably thought he was a police officer. But he wasn't the only person who was killed during the same time because he was in uniform. There was another security officer murdered standing outside of a courthouse, and he also was killed in a drive-by shooting. Several others were also killed, and we'll get into that today. But to think that nothing's going to happen to you if there is any type of violence, if there is any riots, if there is destruction like there has been in previous years, that's the wrong way to think. You really need to train. You need to have a plan, whether you're unarmed or armed, and be prepared. And your employer and their client should make preparation now because it is serious. When I come back, right after talking about the news, I'm going to tell you about some things that happened in recent times and why this is really a very important subject. Everyone, you're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector right here on the Private Officer Radio Network. Now don't go away, because we are coming right back when we've got a whole lot more right here on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
I met Luke when I was pretty much born. We kind of just grew up together. He got his license when he was 16. We were going to the beach, and Luke was driving. I was in the passenger seat, and all of a sudden, I don't remember anything. I wasn't conscious for it. We got hit by a drunk driver. I feel like I knew right away that it was never going to be the same. I don't know. The doctors, they were telling me I was so lucky to be alive. When I found out that he died on impact, I didn't really feel lucky. And sometimes I still don't. Drinking and driving is completely unnecessary, and I think it's selfish if you do it. It's not worth taking that risk, because you never know what's going to happen.
And welcome back to the Private Officer Beat Radio this morning, looking at a couple of news headlines, something I encourage you to do regularly, especially in your area. Be sure that you know what's happening. It really does pay off. Washington, D.C. Special Police Officer was arrested and indicted, charged with unreasonable use of force. According to the news release, Ian Fluen, 36 of Temple Hills, Maryland, was arrested and charged on a one-count federal indictment charging him with violating the constitutional rights of a detained man on April the 12th, 2023, under the color of law. According to the indictment, on April 12th, 2023, while acting under the color of law as a special police officer employed by Capital City Protection in Washington, D.C., he willfully deprives a person of a right or privilege secured and protected by the Constitution and the laws of the U.S., specifically the right to be the use of reasonable force, and by a law enforcement officer, the right to be free from the use of unreasonable force. And even though he was just a special police officer, some say, he was still a law enforcement officer, a sworn law enforcement officer in Washington, D.C. He allegedly assaulted the victim by kicking, punching, and striking the victim without legal justification. He caused bodily injury He deprived that individual of their rights under the color of law, and that's why he was federally indicted and could serve up to 10 years in federal prison. According to the FBI's Washington field office and the assistant U.S. attorney, this is very important to them because they hold special police officers to the same standards of a city, county, or state police officer. In Fort Worth, Texas, a security officer on duty recognized a man that he knew was wanted for trying to kill a police officer. He had seen this on the Blue Alert system, and if you're not familiar with it, I would suggest that you go to it. The Blue Alert notifies you when an officer has been injured or killed, and if they have any suspect information, they give you all of the descriptors on that. Seth Altman was arrested at the Union Gospel Mission in Fort Worth on Friday night because a security officer recognized him when he came in to the mission. Altman, 33, had been on the run for 3 weeks after shooting a police officer in Memphis, Tennessee, southeast of Amarillo. The security officer on duty said he immediately recognized this person from his Blue Alert. According to Texas DPS, Altman shot the Memphis, Texas police chief on October the 3rd as he tried to serve a warrant. Kudos to the security officer. The suspect is currently being held on $1 million bond. A security officer convicted of second-degree murder. A Covina, California security officer was convicted this past Wednesday of second-degree murder stemming from shooting a man to death in a confrontation inside a Walgreens in Hollywood nearly 6 years ago. Jurors deliberated for just 2 days before acquitting Donald Vincent Quixota, now 34, of the more serious charge of first-degree murder, which the prosecution had recommended, in the death of 21-year-old Jonathan Hart. Instead, he was found guilty of second-degree murder. He's facing 15 years to life because they believe it was unwarranted and unreasonable use of force. A Missouri security officer is accused of sexually assaulting a woman and punching a police officer while on duty. What's wrong with these people? A security officer at the Brentwood Promenade, a shopping center there, is accused of sexually assaulting a woman and then assaulting a police officer who was trying to arrest him. Muriel Goulet is charged with third-degree assault, resisting arrest, fourth-degree assault, and other charges are pending. According to police, he targeted 2 women while working at the job at the Brentwood Promenade. He's accused of approaching them, talking to them about their shoes, and then fondling and kissing their feet. When an officer tried to arrest them, according to police, he punched the officer in the face and tried to run. He was arrested after a short foot pursuit. He's currently being held in the St. Louis jail on a $50,000 bond. A new law in Utah. Every school in the state, private or public, must have an armed security officer. But unfortunately, HB 84, as the law was known, has caused a lot of issues because many school systems cannot afford, they don't have the allocations of the funds to afford it. Statewide, they estimate it would cost all schools about $100 million a year just to comply with this new law. Members of the State School Security Task Force said they've come to a conclusion last week after meeting to discuss the new initiative, how to proceed. Right now, some school systems are able to pay for armed security while others are not. While the estimates are between $800 million, in some cases $100 million, and in some cases $200 million, depending on the size of the system. Statewide, it says actually that the total amount could be well over $1 billion a year, and they're trying to figure out how best to move forward. In Regina, Canada, as in places here in the U.S., they began having 7 new special constables, those are like special police officers, patrol the downtown area of the city. With a shortage of law enforcement, they decided to use what's called Alternative Response Officers, ARO, to patrol the downtown areas and take care of minor offenses and situations. They have a certain amount of training. They're not fully armed. They have all of the tasers and less lethal stuff, just no firearm, but they do have a two-way radio direct to the police dispatch. The officers will operate on overlapping 10-hour shifts, and it has worked in other areas of Canada. A college campus police officer shot during a confrontation. This happened in Denver, Colorado this past week. The police officer was shot in the arm after a suspect opened fire after he was stopped on the campus of the University of Colorado, Denver. The incident started, they say, when the suspect was caught trespassing in a vehicle. The campus officer went to investigate. A confrontation ensued, and the police officer was shot. In Metro Atlanta, in Albany, Georgia, 5 people were injured, 1 dead after a shooting on that campus. Gunfire erupted during a homecoming weekend at the Albany State University. Campus officers responded. They say 1 person's dead, 5 were shot and injured. According to police, it all started with a confrontation. The safety and security of ASU students and faculty and staff are the #1 priority. Of course, the president said. Lawrence Drake. The injured victims were treated at a triage center on campus before being sent off to a local hospital. An investigation is ongoing. It doesn't say if the suspect has been apprehended. In Kentucky, police shot an armed man. Security at the Baptist Health in Hardin County notified police that a man had a firearm. When police responded, they confronted him. The man pulled the firearm and he was shot by police. A security officer was shot while patrolling an apartment complex. This happened in Antioch, which is Nashville, Tennessee, this past week. The security officer was on foot patrol when he noticed a suspicious person. The security officer went to check on him. Officers state that before the security officer could even talk, the suspect pulled a firearm and began shooting at the security officer, hitting him in the chest. Fortunately, the security officer had a body armor. He was wearing body armor, which helped to slow down that bullet. Police used dogs and helicopter, but a suspect was not arrested. A school security officer in Michigan was arrested for having sex with a student. Darian Craig Lamar Webster, 26, of Detroit, has been charged with 2 counts of third-degree criminal sexual conduct with a minor after contacting that teen while working school security. He's being held on a $150,000 cash bond. In Honolulu, security officers and police officers there were honored this past week in a ceremony. According to the news release, police officers and security officers worked together during an investigation. Jerry Dolick, president of the Hawaii Hotel Visitor Industry Security Association, emphasized the importance of providing support to law enforcement and security, and evidently this was a robbery, and they were honored and recognized. In Knoxville, Tennessee, a security officer working for the school system was involved in an accident. Minor injuries were sustained, no serious injuries. 2 men, including a security officer, was indicted for a shooting that occurred at a bar. This happened in June, and they were just indicted last week. The men face a number of charges. According to the news article, the security officer was also indicted on felony charges for discharging his firearm unnecessarily and causing panic. Remember, when you see news happening, all that you have to do is contact us at helpdesk@privateofficer.com. I'll take a quick break. I want to talk to you about what may play out in the very next few days. And it's reality. It's not something we're making up. It's not something that oh, it might occur, it won't occur, who knows. The truth is, we've gone through it already several times in recent years, so we know what to expect. We'll be right back here on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
They say if you want a wish to come true, never tell anyone. But there is one wish that can make the difference between life and death. And this wish can only come true if you tell someone. Please, let your family know you want to be an organ donor.
Are you looking for the finest private security officer training in the Charlotte metropolitan area? Do you need PPS qualifications in armed or unarmed training? Or maybe you're over there across the line in South Carolina and you need the SLED training. Well, we've got the right training at the right time for you. Premier Training Academy, located at 5624 Executive Center Drive, Suite 142 in metropolitan Charlotte, North Carolina. Give them a call today, 704-806-4933. They also offer firearms training, personal protection, first aid and CPR, and so much more. Call John at 704-806-4933. Across the country in law enforcement circles, there's been a lot of talk, not just in the last week, but for months now, that violence not might, but will take place after or around the election time, which is, about a week or so away. We've seen this previously, and now they really expect, since people have gotten some practice in it, that this is going to be much bigger than we've seen in years past. We're talking about riots with weapons, riots of violence and destruction all around the elections. No matter who wins and who loses, law enforcement and the military have been gearing up and training for quite some time, according to law enforcement resources that I have luckily been privy to. I just read an article that was actually in a public newspaper that was about how the National Guard had been training for quite some time for this very event. And not only the National Guard, but the law enforcement working with the National Guard. And just like in other riots, they have been called out. And I am sure that this event, if situations do get out of hand, that once again, law enforcement will definitely be called out. You might say it doesn't really affect security. Well, I have a very good friend of mine in Virginia. And during the riots there that has gone on for a number of years now, his clients have required them to have armed security around their properties 24 hours a day. And this went on for weeks. And so not only did they have to have the training required by the state, but they also did their own training, and they brought in somebody who had expertise training in riot control and weaponry and things of that nature. And they were there in the heat of the battle. They were right in the middle of where the bulk of the riots were taking place in Richmond, Virginia, and in Northern Virginia. Security officers in Charlotte a few years ago were shot. And again, during a riot. And security officers have been shot and killed at other places as well. during these violent attacks. So if you think that it doesn't affect security, that you're not going to be too worried about it, and you're going to be laid back and no need to prepare, no need to think about it, you're wrong. All that you have to do is check out the security officers who have been killed previously, and they've all made headlines, and you can research that. On June the 2nd, 2020, during a riot, a security officer, David Dorn, a 77-year-old retired police captain, was fatally shot after interrupting a burglary at a pawn shop during a riot. The incident took place, and it clearly states that in the news, during the riots in St. Louis, Missouri, following the murder of George Floyd. That's another example of how you can prepare or not prepare, but either way, even a 77-year-old retired police captain with all of the training that he had, and probably had a firearm and no doubt prepared, but he was killed during the riot. Two federal court security officers gunned down during the riots, and others as well were injured and killed. And we can go on and on and on, but that's not my point here today on the radio program. I do want to give you that heads up. I want you to be aware that this is a real thing, a real danger, and no matter where you are or where you work, if this kicks off the way that they think that it will, you are definitely going to be in harm's way unless you are barricaded in your home with, a stockpile of bullets and firearms. But if you're out working security, now the security officer in Charlotte that was killed during the riots, he was at a hotel. Another security officer that was killed was at the entrance to an office complex, and he was shot in a drive-by. You have to understand that when you're in uniform and you look like police, and even if they know you're not police, you're going to be a possible target more than ever. I think that many security officers downgrade what it is that they do. I think that many security officers downplay their role in protecting life and property, and especially during times of violence, during times of civil unrest. They don't really think that's part of their role, and nothing's going to happen to them. I have another case I can show you where in, I believe it was Albuquerque, it may have been Texas, I don't remember, but during the riots, people broke into a large office building, and the security officer, older woman, was killed. And we could go on and probably share other stories where security officers have been injured during acts of violence and riots and civil unrest, but I think you get the point. I really hope that you will take it to heart, that you will look at what you can do to better prepare. If you are going to be working, I would say from November 1st, just a few days away, through that following week, or maybe even a couple of weeks, if you're working security at any post, any location, whether it be a shopping mall, an office building, the courthouse, or on foot patrol, you need to be prepared for being attacked, being shot. You need to prepare for being a victim. You need to be prepared to defend yourself and others. And if you don't think that you're qualified and you don't think that you want to engage, you probably should not be working security, especially during this time. You might want to maybe take a few days or a few weeks off, because there's a good likelihood that you will have to fight off, engage, or otherwise be in a combative situation. That's going to do it for today's radio show. I really do hope that you take this to heart, that you research what you can do to better protect yourself and others during any type of civil unrest or violence. Until the next time, you all be safe, be blessed, and we'll see you back on the radio.